Unexpectedly discovering my grandson, shivering on Thanksgiving changed everything forever. The aroma of the golden brown turkey wafted through Mike's modest suburban home, filling it with memories of laughter and warmth. Yet, this Thanksgiving felt hollow. It was the first one without Sarah, his beloved wife, the heart of their family. He looked around, hoping to catch a glimpse of his teenage son, Jake, but the boy was lost in his own world, drifting further away since the tragedy. Mike's chest tightened as he recalled the joy that used to fill this house, remembered the smiles shared over big meals and heartfelt toasts. Determined to maintain some semblance of normalcy, Mike invited their neighbors, Mrs. Thompson, a widow whose kindness always brought light into their lives, and the Johnsons, whose financial struggles had pushed them almost to the margins of their social circle. The table looked warm and inviting, adorned with cool autumn colors, but as they gathered around it, the air hung heavy with unspoken words. Jake sat at the edge of the table, eyes glazed, a stark contrast to the lively chat around him. Mike's heart ached at the sight. He opened his mouth, ready to bridge the silence, when suddenly, Jake bolted outside, the door slamming shut behind him. Panic surged through Mike as he scrambled after his son. The biting chill of the late November air hit him hard as he stepped outside. There beneath the old oak tree, which had witnessed their family's ups and downs, sat Jake, shivering and withdrawn. Mike's instincts kicked in. He rushed to his side, kneeling in the fallen leaves, feeling his own vulnerability reflected in Jake's troubled gaze. "Jake, what's wrong?" he asked, voice catching in his throat. The cold bit through his jacket, but the chill in his heart was even colder. I can't do this, Dad," Jake replied, his words barely above a whisper, eyes brimming with unshed tears. "Why are we pretending everything's okay? It's not." Mike felt the weight of his son's grief hit him like a wave. A war veteran, he had faced fear before, but facing his son's brokenness felt like the hardest battle yet. They were both numb, enveloped in their shared grief, and here under the silence of the oak, for the first time, Mike understood the invisible scars they bore, the ones that bound them together, yet kept them apart. In that frozen moment, Mike took a deep breath, determined to break through the ice that had formed between them. Just then, laughter and warmth spilled from the house, the neighbors' voices filling the night with comfort. Before we continue, I need to let you know about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system, and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, hit that bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can drop a like, it really helps me with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, let me know in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. Do you think Mom would be proud of us? Jake's question hung heavy in the air, pulling at Mike's heartstrings and unraveling the hope he had desperately clung to. The innocent yet loaded inquiry sent a shockwave through him, stirring up layers of regret and longing. Mike opened his mouth to respond, but the warmth from the house felt distant, inviting, yet impossibly far away. The evening stretched on, a landscape of grief and gratitude, hope and heartbreak interwoven. What would they say to each other next? The possibility of healing loomed just out of reach, hanging like the crisp autumn air, waiting for them to find their way back to each other. The silence between them felt heavy, almost tangible. Mike studied Jake's face, a mix of anger and sadness etched in every line. He wanted to reach out, to pull his son close and reassure him that everything would be all right. But he felt trapped in his own grief. Words caught in his throat, all the things he wanted to say battling against the fear of making things worse. "Jake," he finally said, his voice softer now. "It's okay to feel this way. We lost her, and it hurts. It's okay not to pretend." Jake looked down at his hands, the tremor of emotion evident in the way they clenched into fists. "It just feels so pointless," he muttered. "Everyone's smiling inside, and I'm out here pretending that I'm fine." "I'm not fine, Dad." At that moment, a wave of understanding washed over Mike, a recognition of just how isolated Jake must have felt in a room full of normal. As a father, it stung knowing his son was suffering in silence, where laughter should have drawn them together. Mike shifted closer, the chill of the leaves brushing his skin, but the cold didn't compare to the fear of losing Jake. "You're not alone, son. I'm here, and I feel it too." We can get through this together. We can talk or not talk, whatever you need. Jake finally met his father's gaze, and in that moment, something shifted, a faint glimmer of hope piercing through the clouds of despair. But what if I can't find a way back? He asked, voice trembling. It's a journey, Mike replied, surprised at his own calmness. And it's okay if it takes time. Just promise me one thing. What? Jake asked, eyebrows knitted with confusion. Promise me you'll talk to me. Don't bottle it up, even when you think it's silly or unimportant. The sincerity in Mike's voice caught Jake off guard, and slowly, his features softened. I promise, he whispered, the weight of the world starting to ease just a little. They sat in silence for a moment, the sound of laughter from inside mingling with the fall of leaves rustling around them, a shared space that felt safer now. Mike felt something inside him shift, a sense of purpose emerging amidst heartbreak. Let us head back in, Mike suggested, heart racing, taking a deep breath to bolster his courage. I'm sure Mrs. Thompson has more stories than you can handle, and maybe we can sneak some extra pie? Jake's lips quirked into the faintest hint of a smile before he gave a small nod as they stood up, brushing leaves off their jeans. A sense of warmth enveloped them, not just from the house behind them, but from the newfound connection between father and son. Ready? Mike asked. Yeah, let us do this, Jake replied, the determination in his voice unmistakable as they walked back towards the glow of the house. Mike felt a kinship growing between them, one where grief was no longer a prison, but a shared understanding. They stepped through the door, warmth wrapping around them like a soft blanket, but dread crept in. They had taken a step, yes, but there was still the whole storm of healing ahead. Jake glanced nervously at the gathering, and Mike could almost hear him asking if he could handle it. But there was something different in Jake's eyes today, a spark of resilience. Would this be enough? Would this promise of openness bring them closer? He could only hope that this moment was just the beginning. As they entered the bustling kitchen, laughter swelled around them, but it held a different tone now. Mike still had so many questions, and his heart raced as he realized how deeply the road to healing would be intertwined with Jake's feelings. What would it take to truly be okay again? And what would Mike have to confront within himself to help his son? The uncertainty loomed like a specter, but as they settled back into the room, the warmth of that promise filled him with an unexpected courage. The laughter cascaded around them as they stepped deeper into the kitchen, a vibrant hub of activity. The smell of roasting turkey wafted through the air, mingling with the sweet scent of pumpkin pie bubbling in the oven. But for Mike and Jake, the joy felt distant, like a melody playing on a radio just out of reach. Jake hung back slightly, his eyes searching the room as if looking for an escape route. Mike noticed this nervous energy and gently placed a hand on Jake's shoulder. Remember, we're in this together, he murmured, almost as if reassuring both of them. The room thrummed with life. Cousins ran around, their laughter piercing through the clamor of clinking dishes and cheerful chatter. Mike's heart ached with a mix of pride and sorrow. This was what family was supposed to feel like, yet something essential was missing. Hey, there you two are, Aunt Clara exclaimed, her warm smile lighting up her face as she bounced over, flour dusted on her apron. We need help setting the table. Jake, think you can handle that? Jake hesitated, the shadows of apprehension flashing in his eyes. Mike could feel the weight of the expectations bearing down on his son. But before he could intervene, Jake straightened his back. Sure, I can help, he said, his voice stronger than it felt. They spent the next few moments gathering plates and utensils, the clatter of china breaking the vast silence that usually lingered between them. Mike watched as Jake became engrossed in the task, a methodical focus that reminded him of his younger self. Perhaps this was the outlet Jake needed to channel his emotions, to reclaim some sense of normalcy during the chaos. While they set the table, Aunt Clara chatted away, recounting tales from her childhood, some of which Mike had forgotten. He could see Jake starting to relax, absorbing the familiar laughter and warmth. It brought a flicker of relief in Mike's heart. If they could just keep this momentum going, it might just ease the storm inside his son. Then suddenly, the door creaked open, and in hurried the familiar figure of Grandma Annie, her silver hair catching the light. The room quieted instantly as everyone turned to welcome her. She carried an undeniable presence, warmth radiating from her as she entered. Sorry I'm late. You know how traffic is on Thanksgiving. she exclaimed with a laugh that trembled as it traveled that Jake's face paled momentarily. Mike's breath caught in his throat, memories flooding back. Grandma's hugs had always been Jake's safe haven. Yet, in the wake of loss, her arrival felt bittersweet, reminding them both of the heartbreak they shared. Grandma noticed the struggle in Jake's features and softened her gaze, stepping forward. "Come here, love," she beckoned, opening her arms wide. Jake paused, uncertainty flickering in his eyes. The room buzzed around him, and for a moment, time seemed to stand still. Mike held his breath, caught in that delicate moment where healing could take root or shatter again. Then, as if a dam had broken, Jake stepped forward and wrapped his arms around his grandmother. It was a simple gesture, but it held so much grief, longing, and the unspoken need for connection. Instinctively, Mike's heart soared, and tears prickled his eyes at the vulnerability of it all. As Grandma whispered something sweet to Jake, the laughter and warmth of the kitchen came rushing back like a tide, filling the cracks of their sadness. Could this be a turning point? Could this embrace hold the key they needed for healing? Yet, uncertainty still lingered in Mike's heart. Would these fleeting moments be enough to bridge the gap in their lives? He watched, holding tightly to hope as something shifted inside him, a flicker of belief growing stronger. Crucial words loomed on the edge of his mind, words he knew he needed to say. But would now be the right time? As he watched Jake reconnecting with his grandmother, Mike felt a mix of dread and anticipation. This fleeting moment of connection could easily spiral, and with the weight of the world still hanging over them, what new trials might arise in the heart of this gathering? Mike could only wait and wonder as they all stood together, the future uncertain yet brimming with possibility. As the warmth of Grandma Annie's embrace wrapped around Jake, it felt as if the walls of the kitchen began to dissolve, letting light seep through the cracks and illuminate the shadows that haunted them. Mike watched the two, his heart a mix of relief and worry. This moment was beautiful, but would it last? Jake's shoulders relaxed as he clung a little tighter to Grandma, his usual tension visibly easing. The kitchen slowly filled back with laughter. The kids had returned to their high-energy games while the adults resumed their chatter, the ambience vibrant and alive. Yet for Mike, it was as if the chaos faded into a dull roar. His focus remained on his son, absorbing each flicker of emotion playing across Jake's face. "Are you all right?" Grandma's voice broke through his reverie, calm and soothing. Jake pulled back slightly, his blue eyes shimmering, betraying a delicate mix of hope and sorrow. "I think so," he whispered, glancing around the room. Grandma nodded, brushing a strand of hair away from his forehead. "It's okay to feel everything, you know? You're not alone." Mike marveled at the strength in her words. She always had a way of knowing just what to say to cut through the noise. But as he observed her tender exchange with Jake, another wave of fear washed over him. What if their connection didn't survive the weight of the day? Around them, the preparations continued. The turkey was finally set on the table, and everyone seemed to converge for the ceremonial moment of gratitude. Faces glowed, full of expectancy, yet Mike's heart raced at the thought of what was coming. He finally summoned the courage to step closer, feeling the tension between them thicken as he approached. The moment he reached Jake's side, he felt a sudden unwillingness to speak, as if words could tarnish the fragile connection they had just begun to build. "Jake," he started, his voice low, "you did a great job helping set the table. Everyone appreciates it." He hoped the compliment would spark a conversation, soothe the unvoiced fears that lingered between them. Jake's eyes flickered to him, uncertain but appreciative. "Thanks, Dad," he mumbled, and for a moment, they locked gazes, the unspoken bond throbbing with potential. But just as hope surged within Mike, Aunt Clara clapped her hands excitedly. "Okay, everyone, time to say what we're thankful for this year." The gentle nudging of family members prompted the younger children to begin, their innocent responses bursting forth with wide-eyed enthusiasm. Mike felt the shift in the air, a mix of joy, nostalgia, and dread coiling in his stomach. He didn't know when it would be their turn, and he dreaded it so much. When it finally came to Jake's moment, the room quieted. Eyes turned toward him. The subtle scrutiny felt like a gale-force wind pushing against him. Sweat prickled the back of Mike's neck. Was Jake ready for this? Would he retreat under pressure, or rise to the occasion? But as Jake stood there, The weight of the family's attention heavy on his shoulders, something shifted within him. He took a deep breath, his eyes darting to Grandma for a moment of encouragement, and she nodded gently, a small, reassuring smile gracing her lips. In that flash of encouragement, Jake began to speak, words faltering at first, but gaining strength with every breath. I'm thankful for Grandma, for being here. The sentiment, simple and profound, resonated throughout the room, drawing soft murmurs of agreement. Mike's heart swelled at those words. Maybe this was the moment they needed. But just as hope blossomed, a crackling voice pierced through the warmth. And what about your dad? It was a distant cousin, unknowingly igniting a storm. The room tensed. Mike's stomach dropped. Jake's eyes widened, his bravado momentarily faltering, the challenge of the moment creeping back. Could they weather this turn? Would the connection hold? Or would the storm break them apart again? As the laughter faded to a whisper, Mike felt all the eyes upon them, waiting for Jake's response. The room felt suspended, teetering on the brink of vulnerability. Mike could only hold his breath, anxiously waiting for the answer that could either bridge the gap or widen it eternally. Jake's heartbeat echoed like a drum in his ears, drowning out the whispers around him. He could feel the weight of the room pressing in, all their eyes waiting, holding their breath. Time slowed, and for a second, at that moment, he felt completely lost. He stole a glance at Grandma, who was watching him with endless love and encouragement, her eyes shimmering like stars in a night sky. It comforted him, filling him with a warmth that pushed back the panic swirling in his stomach. He cleared his throat, the silence in the room stretching like a taut string ready to snap. Jake hesitated, glancing down at his trembling hands. I'm thankful for Dad, too. The words came out in a rush, bursting forth like a sunbeam piercing through clouds. A small gasp echoed around the table, and the distance in the atmosphere shifted. Some family members exchanged surprised glances while others smiled warmly, as if Jake had unlocked a door they all desperately wanted opened. Really? Mike's voice cracked slightly, the surprise washing over him in waves. He felt an unfamiliar mixture of pride and relief swelling in his chest, but then doubt crept back in. Jake's bravado still felt cautious, tentative. Jake nodded, his blue eyes finding his father's, and for a moment it felt as if the walls around them melted away. Yeah, I know it's been rough, but I'm glad you're trying, Dad. The honesty of those simple words hit Mike like a punch to the gut. He had been so careful to tread lightly, scared to disrupt the fragile balance they'd reached. But here was Jake, stepping out into the open with both feet, offering a bridge he had longed for. Thanks, buddy. Mike's throat felt thick, emotion swelling within him. That means a lot. As the tension drained from the air, the moment became a collective sigh of relief, and laughter slowly returned to the table. Aunt Clara beamed. See? Look at that. Progress. Now, who else feels like sharing? Jake couldn't help but smile, the uncertain clouds lifting like a distant storm. He relaxed, feeling lighter, hope sprinkling around him like confetti. He might not have had every answer, but he was here, sharing his truth, and that was enough for this moment. As everyone resumed their appreciative chatter, Mike leaned closer to Jake, low and sincere. I'm proud of you. You know that, right? For saying that. Yeah, I know. Jake grimaced, momentarily awkward but happy, the little boy still flickering through the teen facade. But I still kinda hate turkey. The gentle laughter around them became an eruption, a wave that washed over the anxiousness which had threatened to drown them. Yet in the midst of the joy, Mike couldn't shake the feeling that a shadow still loomed over them. Their words had been honest and true, but there were more difficult conversations waiting just beneath the surface. The warmth of connection felt fragile, as if an unexpected gust might sweep it all away again. With that thought lingering, Mike reached out, brushing his fingers against Jake's arm in a silent promise, a signal that he was there, ready to face whatever storm might come next. But as they settled into the laughter that filled the room, the doorbell rang, cutting through the joy. Mike glanced at Jake, uncertainty flickering in his eyes. Who was at the door now? Could it be another family member? Or could it perhaps be someone who held unexpected truths that would change everything once again? The sudden ring of the doorbell sent an electric jolt through the room, momentarily freezing everyone in place. Conversations died out, and all eyes shifted toward the entrance, where shadows lurked just beyond the threshold. Mike felt his breath hitch, caught between anticipation and dread. Should I get it? Jake asked, a nervous edge creeping into his voice. Yeah, go ahead, Mike replied, trying to sound more confident than he felt. He noticed his own heart racing again, a familiar rhythm of uncertainty beating in his chest. Jake pushed back his chair and walked toward the door, each step heavy with the weight of expectation. Mike could see his son's frame stiffening, caught in the moment where curiosity and anxiety collided. It felt surreal, almost like stepping into a scene from a movie. Who is it? Aunt Clara called out, her voice laced with intrigue. A few beats of silence hung heavily in the air as Jake reached for the doorknob, his hand trembling slightly. When he finally swung the door open, the world outside briefly flooded the room with pale, autumn light. Standing on the porch was an unfamiliar man, tall and broad-shouldered, with deep-set eyes that held stories of their own. The chill of the late November wind swept in, and Mike instinctively shivered. "Hello?" the man said, his voice low and gravelly. There was a calm authority to him, but something in his gaze seemed hesitant, almost lost. Jake blinked, unsure how to process this stranger's presence. "Can I help you?" "I'm looking for Mike," the man replied, his eyes shifting past Jake as they landed on Mike's uneasy figure at the table. All the warmth from dinner fled as a shiver ran down Mike's spine. "I'm Mike," he managed, his voice a note higher than usual. The man stepped closer, revealing a hint of familiarity before Mike could grasp it fully. "It's been a while," he said, the subtext hanging heavily in the air. "What do you mean?" Mike felt the world around him blur, the laughter of his family fading into an unsettling echo. "I think you need to hear what I have to say. It's about Jake and you." The man's eyes darted anxiously toward Jake, who remained by the doorway, confusion etched across his youthful face. Jake caught his father's gaze, and it seemed to pulse between them like a hidden thread, woven from shared worry. "Dad," he spoke softly, sensing something unspoken looming heavily. "Can you come in?" Mike asked as he took a tentative step forward. The man nodded, and for a split second, Mike wondered whether he should have invited him in at all. The man followed Jake into the dining room, but the atmosphere shifted. Conversations picked up nervously, glances exchanged like unearned secrets. Mike faced the stranger, heart pounding, his mind racing with questions. "Who are you?" he finally blurted out, his throat dry. "What do you have to tell us?" The man hesitated, choosing his words with care. "I'm James," he began, his voice steady but strained with the weight of a story he clearly had to tell. "And I have news about your son." A heavy silence fell again. Everyone leaned in, caught in the gravity of the moment, breath held tight. Jake moved closer to his father, a palpable blend of fear and curiosity flashing across his face. "About me?" Jake whispered, confusion swirling in his bright eyes. Mike's chest tightened as the air crackled with the tension of unspoken truths hanging over them. He needed answers, but this felt bigger than that. Did this man hold the key to a part of Jake's life they had yet to uncover? Just then, the old clock on the wall chimed, and each echo felt like a countdown. Mike braced himself. What storm were they about to face together? The moment of reckoning had arrived, but they were all standing at the edge of uncertainty, questioning everything. "Prepare for the truth," James said, his voice a quiet rumble. And in that instant, the world shifted, as if everything they'd known was about to change forever. James took a deep breath, his gaze steady as he searched for the right words. The silence in the room grew thicker, each family member sensing the weight of the truth just out of reach. Mike's heart raced in his chest, a relentless drumbeat of anxiety. "Tell us what you know," he urged, his voice urgent and raw. "Jake has a brother," James finally revealed, his eyes narrowing, guarding something deeper. "A half-brother." Mike's world tilted. The room felt surreal, distorted, as if it were spinning. "What? No, that can't be right." He looked at Jake, who stood beside him with wide, shocked eyes. The boy's face froze, a mixture of disbelief and confusion. "It's true," James replied, his voice steady but heavy with emotion. "He was born before you and I, before we lost touch. I've been searching for you, both of you." A heavy pause descended, and Mike could sense the ripple of shock in the room, his family exchanging frantic whispers. "Lost touch?" Jake echoed softly, glancing up at his father, his young face crumpling. "Why didn't you tell me, Dad?" I didn't know, Jake. Mike fought to keep his voice steady, but it was a losing battle. His mind scrambled to cope. You mean to tell me there's another kid, a brother? Where is he? Why haven't we met? James took a step closer, eyes softening as he addressed Jake. His name is Ben. He has been in foster care for a while, waiting for a family to bring him home. I hope to reunite your family. Reunite? Mike shouted, the panic clawing at him. What do you mean? Each question felt like a brick stacked on his chest, suffocating him. Your parents made the decision to put some things behind them, but I couldn't forget what happened. I went looking for Ben when I realized James's voice faltered, and the room seemed to hold its breath. Realized what? Aunt Clara asked, her voice trembling, as if the entire house recognized that they were on the brink of something monumental. James shifted his weight. I realized that he deserves to know his family, too. He deserves a chance. Jake's eyes filled with tears, and he turned to his father. Dad, do you think we could get him? The innocence in his voice broke through the heaviness in Mike's heart. We'll find him, Mike promised, though he was unsure if it was the truth or a desperate hope. The thought of a brother felt as foreign as it was exciting, and he could see Jake's entire demeanor shift, the boy clinging to the idea that something wonderful might still be possible. Tonight? Jake's voice was small, almost drowned out by the rising tide of unasked questions swirling in the room. James nodded, a glimmer of hope in his eyes. If you want this, I can help. I have some contacts. But another thought struck Mike, sharper than any before. What if he doesn't want to meet us? The potential rejection struck like a cold wind cutting through the warmth of the gathering. Then we'll give him time, James replied resolutely. But he deserves to know he's not alone. He deserves to know you, Jake. As Jake processed this revelation, his expression transformed from apprehension to determination. Let us find him, Dad. Let us do it. Amidst the swirling emotions, Mike felt something shift within himself, a flicker of hope, the promise of new beginnings wrapped in the complexity of family. Okay, he whispered, swallowing down an emotion he couldn't yet name. Let us find Ben. In that moment, as Mike turned to James, the world outside dimmed. Their lives were intertwined now with the promise of something they'd never known. Could they really bring Ben into their lives by Thanksgiving? With each heartbeat, Mike felt the impending transformation unfurl in his chest, intensifying with the promise of change, a change that would test their strength, their love, and the very essence of what it meant to be family. But deep down, a voice questioned whether they understood the magnitude of what lay ahead. Would bringing Ben into their lives heal old wounds or open new ones? As Mike locked eyes with Jake, the awareness sparked between them. The real journey was only just beginning. The car ride felt heavier than usual, the weight of anticipation sitting like lead in their stomachs. Mike glanced at Jake, who stared out the window, the passing trees a blur of green, yellow, and red. It was Thanksgiving Eve, but the holiday cheer felt far away, wrapped up in the uncertainty of the evening ahead. Do you think he'll like us? Jake asked, his voice small, almost lost among the sound of the tires on the pavement. Mike swallowed hard. I hope so. But remember, it might take some time for him to adjust. The truth was difficult. He had no idea what this boy, Ben, had been through. The only thing Mike was sure of was his determination to make this work. James drove with a calm focus, eyes fixed ahead, but Mike could see the flicker of worry at the corners of his mouth. The silence in the car was punctured now and then by the radio, playing songs that were meant to soothe, but felt like distant echoes of a celebration they weren't quite ready for. What if he doesn't want to come with us? Jake's brow furrowed, and he turned to glance at James. Then we'll go slow, James assured, his tone light but serious. Just let him feel comfortable. He'll know soon enough that you're good people. Mike felt the warmth of Jake's hand slip into his. It was a simple gesture, but it grounded him. The fear that had settled in his chest since learning about Ben twisted into something else, a fierce determination. We'll show him, he said softly, speaking more for himself than Jake. We'll show him what a family looks like. They arrived at the group home just as dusk settled over the town, the sun dipping below the horizon, casting elongated shadows across the yard. Mike's heart raced. Would he be ready? Would Ben be ready? As they stepped out of the car, the chill of the evening air wrapped around them. It felt surreal standing in front of the building that housed an unknown future for their family. Mike held Jake's hand tightly as they made their way up the steps. Inside, the muted sounds of laughter and chatter came from the common room. Matthew, the director of the home, met them at the door. "I'm so glad you made it," he said with a warm smile, one that didn't quite reach his eyes. "Ben's excited to meet you, but he has had a lot on his mind." Just then, Matthew motioned them to follow him. Mike cautiously walked behind with Jake, his heart pounding like a drum. This was it. They turned a corner, and there he sat on a worn-out couch, all alone. Ben. The boy couldn't have been more than 8, with dark curls that fell into his eyes. Thin and small, he fidgeted, his fingers twisting a threadbare fabric on the couch. To Mike, he looked like a small bird, waiting. "Ben," Matthew said gently, "there are some people here to meet you." Ben's gaze quickly lifted, and for one brief moment, their eyes locked. Mike held his breath, the room around them fading into a blur. His heart swelled with tenderness, but he couldn't decipher Ben's expression: curiosity, fear, perhaps, or something more profound. Jake stepped forward, confidence tinged with nervousness. "Hi, I'm Jake, your brother," he stammered, his voice barely above a whisper but full of hope. Finally, Ben blinked, his expression unreadable as he shifted slightly, not quite leaning in but not pulling away either. "Brother?" Ben echoed, the word rolling off his tongue as though it were new, foreign. "Yeah," Jake said, taking a deep breath, a flicker of determination lighting his eyes. "Want to come home with us for Thanksgiving?" For a heartbeat, time stood still. Mike held his breath. Would Ben step forward, embrace the possibility of family, or retreat into himself? The tension thickened, as if the air itself was waiting to see what would unfold. Suddenly, the front door opened with a creak, and a gust of chilly wind swept through the corridor, rustling the loose papers on a nearby table. Mike shivered. The moment of truth was here. Would they find warmth in each other's hearts? Or would they all be left shivering together in uncertainty? Jake's small voice cut through the silence, determined and earnest. "It can be just us. I promise it'll be great." As Ben continued to stare, a flicker of something passed over his features. Curious? Hopeful? Before Mike could contemplate what it might mean, the room shifted again, and somewhere deep within, he felt the dawning awareness that everything was about to change forever. What would Ben decide? Would he step into their world, or choose to remain a shadow in the darkness? The silence in the room seemed to stretch on forever. Mike watched Ben, searching for any sign of what the boy was feeling. Then, slowly, Ben began to frown, his gaze dropping to the worn couch beneath him. The weight of the moment pressed hard on Mike's chest. "Ben?" Jake's voice was tentative as he took a cautious step closer. "You don't have to say yes right now. We can just talk." "Talk," Ben echoed quietly, his voice barely above a whisper. The word hung in the air, fragile and unsure. Matthew smiled gently, trying to ease the tension. "You know, Ben, it's okay to take your time. Meeting new people can be overwhelming." Ben looked up, his eyes darting around the small group, as if searching for something that he couldn't quite name. There was a flicker of defiance in his dark eyes, a protective shell that had clearly been formed from past experiences. "Why do you want me to come?" he finally asked, his voice trembling ever so slightly. There was a challenge in his tone, as if daring them to justify their intentions. Mike took a step forward, his heart aching at the uncertainty in Ben's gaze. "Because we think you're special, Ben." He felt the lump rise in his throat. "And we want to be a family. We just want to show you," he hesitated, searching for the right words, "show you that you can belong." Ben's expression softened, but it was quickly replaced with skepticism. "You don't know me," he mouthed, folding his arms tightly across his chest in a defensive posture. Jake, ever the stalwart brother, interjected. "Yeah, but we can get to know each other. We can start fresh. We have a really nice home. You get to play games, eat good food, and we can even watch movies together." His enthusiasm was infectious, but Mike sensed the walls surrounding Ben were still strong. Without warning, Ben's eyes shifted, and he looked down at his hands, wringing them nervously. "What if I don't like it?" His voice barely rose above the whisper. What if I can't stay?" Mike felt a surge of empathy for Ben's fears. "It's okay to feel like that," he assured him gently. "You can always tell us how you feel. We'll figure it out together, no matter what." The boy remained silent, his fidgeting fingers slowing down as his mind raced. Mike could sense the struggle within him, the conflicting desires for safety and the terrifying prospect of opening up to something new. "Please, Ben," Jake pressed softly. "If you come, we promise to make it fun. We will do everything we can to show you you're safe with us." And then, as if time had finally decided to move again, Ben hesitated. His mouth opened slightly as if to express a thought, but no sound emerged. Mike could feel the pull between them, the thin thread of hope that lingered. Suddenly, the wind howled again outside, a fleeting reminder of the bitter cold beyond the thin walls of the home. Mike's heart raced, and he fought to keep his emotions in check. The moment felt so fragile, yet so powerful. "Jake's right," Mike said, sensing the shift in the air. "You deserve a chance to know what a family feels like. And maybe, just maybe, you're the missing piece we didn't know we were looking for." Ben looked from Mike to Jake, the glimmer of uncertainty still dancing in his eyes. Yet, there was something else too, just a hint of curiosity. A small spark overshadowed by fear, but present nonetheless. "Okay." His voice was a mere whisper, a fragile agreement that held no guarantees. I'll try." The word hung in the air, a flicker of hope igniting between them. Mike felt relief wash over him, but it was accompanied by the understanding that this was only the beginning. That as they moved closer, Jake beamed, and Mike felt a warmth spreading through their little circle. There was still so much to navigate, so many emotions to confront, but together they could face whatever came next. Just then, a voice from the doorway called out nervously, interrupting their fragile moment. "Matthew, can we have some hot chocolate?" All eyes turned to see another child peeking around the corner, wide-eyed and curious. The boy, a sticky fingers clutched an empty mug, and he looked at Ben with a tinge of excitement. "Looks like there's a welcome committee." Matthew chuckled, his easy laughter lightening the tension in the air. Mike shared a glance with Jake, both boys bursting into smiles at the arrival of this new distraction. But Ben's features held a mixture of surprise and apprehension, his eyes glistening as the reality of their warmth began to envelop him. What awaited them as they stepped into this new chapter together? Would Ben find joy amidst the chaos of newfound family? The door was left ajar, an invitation to step out into the unknown, and just as they were about to take that first step, the question lingered. Could Ben truly embrace the love he had been missing all along? The drive back felt lighter, buoyed by a subtle shift in the atmosphere. The turmoil that had churned for weeks finally transformed into something more hopeful. Mike glanced at Jake, who was practically beaming, excitement radiating from him. "Dad, do you think we did the right thing?" Jake's voice sliced through the quiet, a mix of eagerness and a touch of vulnerability. "Absolutely," Mike replied with confidence, feeling the warmth of Jake's optimism seep into his own chest. "We gave Ben a chance, just like we wanted for ourselves." As they pulled into the driveway, the lights from their home twinkled cheerfully against the backdrop of the darkening sky, a comforting sight. They stepped out of the car, laughter and chatter spilling from their gathering inside like welcoming arms. Mike hesitated at the threshold, suddenly aware of the weight of what they had just done. But that hesitation slipped away as he felt Jake's small hand in his, squeezing tight, filled with hope. Inside, the atmosphere was alive. The table was set, the turkey glistened under the warm light, and family members swirled around with dishes and laughter, the sound blending together like a sweet melody. Yet amidst the joy, a potent uncertainty lingered, the question of how they would fit into this family tapestry now that they had added a new thread. When they stepped into the room, eyes turned toward them. Mike's heart raced. Would they share in this joy, or would the weight of Ben's absence still cling to the space? But then, Jake stepped forward, an easy eruption of enthusiasm. "Everyone, this is Ben, my brother." Gasps filled the room, followed by scattered applause. Mike felt warmth ripple through the crowd, energy shifting positively. Aunt Clara rushed over, her eyes sparkling with kindness. "Welcome, Ben," she exclaimed, arms open wide. "We're so glad you're here." Ben lingered at the doorway, wide-eyed and overwhelmed. Jake nudged him gently, stepping aside to usher him into their world. "Come on. You're going to love Aunt Clara's stuffing." Slowly, Ben's cautious feet shuffled forward, compelled by Jake's excitement. The room welcomed him, the familial warmth wrapping around them both as laughter bubbled like a stream over rocks. Mike felt a surge of pride watching his son. Jake had already taken the first step in bridging the distance between them. As dinner began, he noticed Jake taking charge, ensuring that Ben was included in every conversation, reassuring him, laughing at his jokes, sharing stories about their little adventures. "Do you want to help me with the pie?" Jake leaned in, whispering to Ben, whose expression brightened for the first time. "Can I?" Ben's eyes sparkled with genuine delight, a color previously absent. "Of course. You could be the official pie tester," Jake teased, leading him toward the kitchen. As they moved away, Mike's chest tightened with joy. Maybe this was how they would weave back together the family fabric that had unraveled. It was a step into the unknown, but a necessary one. Later, as they gathered around the table for grace, Mike felt the weight of the moment. They held hands, voices humming with gratitude. "I'm thankful for new beginnings and for family," he said, the words coming from a place deep within him. A chorus of agreement flooded the table, an affirmation of love, acceptance, and the power of transformation. When it was Jake's turn, he added softly, "And for my brother." "Me too," Ben echoed, and the simplicity of those words hit everyone like a heartfelt embrace. Gratitude radiated through the air, wrapping around them like warm blankets on a cold night. As plates were passed and stories flowed, Mike saw the invisible barriers that once separated them start to dissolve. Laughter spilled out, and for the first time in a long while, the atmosphere felt whole, tender, and fierce with love. "Even though this year started rough, I'm grateful it led us to all of you," Mike shared, the sincerity in his voice resonating through the room. As the evening wore on, Mike caught glimpses of Ben smiling, fully engaged in the lively conversations around them. The walls built around him crumbled piece by piece, laughter tracing its way back to the joy of family closeness. Aunts and uncles began to share stories about Mike and Jake, their history unfolding like a treasured book being reopened. As Mike glanced over at Ben, he realized something beautiful was happening. Ben was starting to belong. Hours later, as the evening drew to a close, Mike watched both boys talking and laughing under the soft glow of the kitchen light, hands animated as they shared their favorite games. Tears brimmed in Mike's eyes, not from sadness, but from overwhelming gratitude. Tonight would be one they'd remember, a joyful tapestry woven not just from turkey and pie, but from love, connection, and the promise of togetherness renewed. Yes, life wouldn't always be easy, but they had crossed an important threshold this Thanksgiving. As he pulled Jake and Ben into a warm hug, Mike whispered, "We'll get through anything together, always." And they all smiled, a beautiful promise sealed between them that if you love heartwarming stories like this and want to join our family on this incredible journey, you need to subscribe now. This is the moment to show your support for stories that inspire change. Leave a like now to feed the algorithm and help others discover this transformation. We want to hear from you. Comment down below how you felt about this ending, and share your thoughts. Don't wait not even one more second. Share this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this heartwarming transformation. Together, we can spread love and gratitude far and wide.